I didn't know how I did it in the interview, but it happened, and I went through the interview, and I left that night, and I stayed at the Jack Tar Hotel over here. The next morning, I got up in the morning, and I'm in the coffee shop, and a friend of mine from law school was having breakfast with my wife and I, and we all agreed that it was nice to be asked to be Attorney General, but I'll never get it, but it was nice to be considered, and maybe I'll become a judge or something by virtue of the governor later on. And I said, I'll probably get a call from the governor because next 2 days from now is my birthday on New Year's Eve, and he'll probably call me to congratulate me. Sure enough, a bellboy came into the coffee shop and said, Mr. Kelley, telephone. I go to the telephone. I said, that's him. So I said, good morning. Good morning, it's Governor Swainson. I said, good morning. So you going back to Alpena? I said, yes. He said, well, would you mind stopping by the house on the way back? It's your birthday's coming up, isn't it? We'll have a drink to your birthday. I said, okay, Governor, fine. I come back, so I said, you're absolutely right. We're going to have a drink to my birthday, and I'm going back to Alpena and live happily ever after. So my wife and I got in the car, went out to they didn't have a governor's mansion in those days. They had a house rented for the governor. We went out there, and I'll never forget, he came to the door himself. It was a large house. And my wife and I walked into the living room, and the governor took us into the center of the living room, and he snapped his fingers, and in came a woman with 3 glasses of champagne. So I said, well, here comes my birthday toast. And the governor took a glass of champagne, gave it to my wife, gave one to me, one to him, and he said, I want to drink a toast to the next Attorney General of Michigan. I almost collapsed right there on the spot. And that's how it happened, about as democratic with a small d as you could get.
Did Governor Swainson give you any ideas of what he expected from you as Attorney General?
No, and one beautiful thing I thought about only in America, nobody from the party, nobody from the governor's office, nobody ever tried to tell me what to do or how to do it or who to appoint or ask me to hire certain people. That never happened. They gave me complete and total judgment, and I always respected that. And I thought it was a good thing, and I think the public should know that when people get these high posts, they're pretty much on their own, and they're allowed to exercise their own integrity, their own judgment. By the same token, if you make a mistake, you made the mistake. But he let me go, and here I was, city attorney of Alpena one day, and chief lawyer for the Michigan the next year, and I was on my own, and that's when I met you.
What were the first issues you faced, Frank?
Well, first issue was who was going to be a deputy attorney general, and on January 1st or 2nd, I think it was, I flew down from Alpena to take the office officially, and who met me at the airport but you. And you had just been made deputy attorney general by Paul Adams just a few months before, and I think you were what at the time, 35? 34. So you were younger than I thought I was young at 36, and you picked me up at the airport. And I'm sure you were uncertain as to what I was going to do about the deputy, and I think I was with you a couple hours and told you that you're going to be the deputy. So that took care of that, and you and I were together very like brothers for about the next dozen years.
That's
I think
right,
it was.
That's right. And so you came to the office. What did you confront? What were the first issues that you confronted?
The first major issue I had was there was a interracial murder case in Detroit. Now this is in 1962, January. Detroit was having some problems, but nothing came to the surface in the area of racial harmony. But there'd been a murder in Palmer Park called the Odell murder case. And what had happened was a young white man and a young black man met. They were with a group of their own groups, and they met in Palmer Park one spring evening. It was an altercation, and one black boy, one white boy got into an argument, and it fell to wrestling and fighting, and they fell into the bushes. And a couple minutes later, the white boy came out of the bushes, and the black boy lay in the bushes dying, and from knife wounds. And the prosecutor in Detroit had refused to issue a warrant, claiming that there wasn't enough evidence one way or the other. And so the different leaderships called on me, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And fortunately, I had Irv Beatty, who was the criminal attorney, head of the criminal division at the Attorney General's office. And Irv Beatty was the one who George Scott played in Anatomy of a Murder. If anybody remembers that movie, The Anatomy of a Murder, book, great story, George C. Scott played Irv Beatty, the state attorney general in that movie. Well, Irv had 25 years experience. I said, Irv, you go to Detroit, you come back and you tell me what you can recommend. So he went down to Detroit and he came back and said, Frank, that's a homicide. You should do something. I said, okay. So I issued the warrant, and of course that was the first time in 50 years that an attorney general had ever taken a case away from the prosecutor, and it became a notorious case. And it did excite both black and white communities. But ironically, when we went to trial down there, we were the local officials in Wayne County, and it's not much of a tribute to them, but they kind of drew the wagon trains in a circle, and we guys from Lansing weren't going to get very far in that prosecution. And sure enough, they brought back a judge from retirement, or was about to retire, who had a record of being very difficult with regard to racial harmony. And then when we went to pick a jury, here we were in Wayne County, the only available jury panel they gave us, a jury panel, was all white. There wasn't one Afro-American person on the whole jury panel. And so we picked the jury panel, and then actually in the course of the trial, they allowed the prosecuting attorney of Wayne County to take the stand and give his opinion as to whether he thought the defendant was guilty or innocent. It's unprecedented in American court, and the judge let it in. Well, needless to say, we lost the case. But I learned two lessons. I said, it's okay to be courageous, and if I had to do it over again, I would do it. But don't expect that justice will triumph every time you do. And so that was a very notorious case.
Wasn't the state constitutional convention going on that year?
There was a constitutional convention going on, and one of the things that came up was possible makeup of the legislature and the apportionment factors in the legislature. And I think I'd only been in office 4 or 5 months, and a notorious case was started by Gus Scholl as the state AFL-CIO leader. He was a very literate and very articulate labor leader, and a social activist. And he brought a case called Scholl versus Hare against Secretary of State. His claim was that the Michigan legislature, particularly the Senate, was unconstitutionally apportioned. In other words, one area that Michigan would have 250,000 people and one senator. Another area outstate would have 75,000 people and a senator. And he thought that was, unequal proportion and violated the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution. And well, it should have. So they told me about this case, and I said, well, you better look into it. You better look into it. So my lawyers looked into it, and they came back and said, that Gus Scholl is right. That this apportionment is very unconstitutional. And so then I issued an opinion to one of the chairmen of the Constitutional Convention, asked me for opinion on that issue. That I couldn't issue opinions. I couldn't just get up in the morning and say, I'm going to issue an opinion. An attorney general has to have an opinion requested by a member of government. And I was requested, and so I issued the opinion that yes, the Michigan Senate was unconstitutionally reapportioned. It violated the Constitution. They had no right to be sitting. And all hell broke loose. The legislature went crazy. They wanted to impeach me. And here I've been in office for 6 months. And it was a very notorious time.
Do you remember our going to New England to argue a case before the Justice of the United States Supreme Court on that issue?
I think we were trying to get a stay. The courts were going to do something that was against the interests of the plaintiffs in the case. And what we had to do, we wanted to get a stay from the United States Supreme Court to allow more time for pleading, something like that. But when the Supreme Court is out of session, the only way you can get a stay is you have to go to the regional Supreme Court justice. For example, in our area, it was Potter Stewart. In other areas of the country, you go to a different justice. And Potter Stewart was on summer vacation in New Hampshire. Governor Swainson asked me to fly to New Hampshire, where he was in a fishing village, and argue as to why he should give a stay in this particular proceedings to help us have time in this reapportionment case. And I remember they sent the state plane up to get me. I was up with the governor at the house in Mackinac Island. The plane was 24 years old. It was an old World War II Beechcraft. I mean, it was old. And it picked me up, and I think he either brought you up from Detroit but anyway, you were on the plane, and he brought Eugene Krasicki, my Solicitor General at the time, and we flew over the vast wastelands of Canada in this slow 180-mile-an-hour airplane to New Hampshire. And it was a moonlight night, and I could look down, and sometimes the moonlight would reflect. I could see wild moose